We already have a hideaway. We've already had America vote on couples, which didn't happen in season 7 until towards the end. I mean, hell, Love Island Games 2 might as well give us a real Casa Amor and a real movie night since we didn't have that in season 7. Good afternoon, all you fellow Love Island Games watchers. Here to talk about episode 8. It was a pretty solid episode. You know, if the show could keep this format where the power couples get to choose who duel, I mean, I know it's similar to the challenge, but the challenge has been on the air for so long for a reason because it works. So I like this format much better than some random American vote about who's gone, because we all know America votes so shitty. So last night's format really worked for me. It caused a lot of tension towards the end about who was going to be eliminated in these eliminations. So let's talk about it. You know, we ended episode 7 with Isaiah and Sydney reconnecting. Sydney made a comment about how she feels like a totally different person. And yeah, I bet she is, because she looks like one too. She tried to say she's here to win and that she and Isaiah ended messy because he cheated. She also said she thinks Isaiah's a good guy, but just does stupid things. I mean, it's very Pisces of him. But she also said the episode prior that there might be unfinished business with Isaiah. But I feel like Isaiah doesn't want to go there. That's the way I feel, and I feel like Sydney already feels that way too, just by coming in. I think Sydney would still try to rekindle something, at least test it. And I'm not convinced Isaiah really wants to. She did have a conversation with Toby. Toby pulled her for a chat. Toby asked some interesting questions about how she felt about alliances. It's one of the first time the show has actually mentioned alliances. So as much as I find Toby to be very boring, if he becomes a strategist with alliances this season, at least I'll have something to respect him with. Sydney was talking about how she's actually smart and she's gonna play the game and she wants to win, so we'll see how smart she really comes off. Some of the couples that were vulnerable this week were feeling some kind of way, you know. Andrea and Johnny, once again at the bottom. They were just at the bottom last time in challenges. Andrea feels like she's been vulnerable every day she's been there, and she has almost been vulnerable every day she's been here. Andrea, of all the things you want to say about her, and sometimes I say about her, she has had to fight for her place in the game. Luckily for her, Johnny is a really good person to have in a couple when it comes to these competitions. Toby and Andrea were also feeling vulnerable. Don't have much to say about them, though. And then KK and Chris were stressed. They went from power couple to one of the bottom couples. But their little storyline this episode was how Marvin seems very attracted to KK, and Chris was starting to seem a little jealous because in the middle of their conversation about feeling stressed about being at the bottom, Marvin pulled KK for a chat. I do think that's who Marvin had his eye on. He's yet another Aries this season, and you can kind of tell he's going to be very straightforward, but I feel like these two new bombshells were kind of afterthoughts already in this episode, having just come in the episode prior. I don't really see Sydney nor Marvin bringing anything, especially with the way this episode ended. So I don't really feel like we have strong bombshells coming into this cast to help the cast have more drama or be a better show. So I don't really love the casting in general. As for Nicola and Isaiah, they were of course happy to win. They're the opposites of Chris and KK. They went from bottom couple to power couple. And then they got the hideaway as a friendship couple, which was a choice. I will say, I already feel like this season of Love Island Games is feeling more like real Love Island than season 7 did. We already have a hideaway. We've already had America vote on couples, which didn't happen in season 7 until towards the end. We had to vote on single players because we didn't have any strong couples. I mean, hell, Love Island Games 2 might as well give us a real Casa Amor and a real movie night since we didn't have that in season 7. So I guess for a show trying to be different than Love Island, it's actually more like Love Island than Love Island USA season 7 was, which says a lot about producers and the production of the show. Maybe this is them saying, we learned a lesson from season 7, but I'll believe that when season 8 comes around. But anyway, Nicola and Isaiah were the power couples this round, and they got to choose 2 girls and 2 guys to go against each other in duels. It's unfortunate that Mert and Solène did not get a chance to save themselves in competitions. But honestly, at that same time, I guess it is kind of unfortunate that these 3 couples didn't get a vote, because I do think the vote would have been different. Although I don't know who would have won that America vote. I would like to think it would be between KK and Chris and Andrea and Johnny, but that definitely would have changed things for the duel. So when Isaiah and Nicola were discussing the duel, I really feel like Isaiah pushed the way he wanted those matchups to go. He was definitely thinking strategic, and that's the name of the game. So props to Isaiah and props to Nicola for eventually going Isaiah's routes. Although Nicola was the first to mention Andrea and KK going against each other, even though they're friends with Nicola. They felt like those 2 were better competitors than Andrea because, we all saw Andrea get bodied in her first duel. And then Isaiah definitely pushed hard for Chris versus Johnny because obviously he thinks he could beat Toby in competitions, and those 2 are the biggest guys. And maybe the only chance to get Chris out of the game. Very smart strategy from Isaiah. Loved it. Nicola was concerned because she does have that connection with Chris. And I low-key think Nicola was hoping Chris was going to beat Johnny and Andrea was going to beat KK, and then maybe she can make a move on Chris. I really do feel that way about Nicola. Which leads me to, those were the matchups that they chose. It was Chris versus Johnny and Andrea versus KK. And KK and Chris were not happy campers. And I didn't feel an ounce sorry for them because KK especially just did the same to Solène, who thought KK was her friend. So for KK to be acting rude with Nicola, it was very eye-roll worthy for me. It was very hypocritical in my opinion. I did not feel at all sorry for KK, and certainly not Chris, who's been all about how he's here to win. He's here for competitions. While it was time for him to buck up, big boy, and win the competition to stay in the game, and we all know how they all went. But I will say at that same time, the victim act from Nicola it's not working on me. We just went through this on season 7. I felt far more victimhood for Amaya because of the way things went for her, because I felt like people, certainly Ace, was playing a game. And so I fell into the victimhood of Amaya. And I still stand behind that. I do. This case, it's a strategy game. That's the way they're making it seem. And certainly when KK called out Nicola that she's not a victim, she was a power couple, that's the way power couples have to play this game. You got to make the big decisions. You're not the victim. She wasn't wrong. So while I felt KK was definitely being hypocritical and being rude, I didn't like when Nicola was talking and KK just walks away, because that was her being a huge hypocrite. She felt no remorse for putting up her friend Solène. Solène thought they were friends. But also, Nicola's not a victim. Let's just make that very clear. I do believe Nicola felt sad that she had to put up her friends, but she's still not a victim. She played the game as a power couple, and KK and Andrea had a right to be in their feelings when they have been 2 of the biggest friends this season. They came into the game together. So that's my 2 cents on that. I also want to say, as much as I like Isaiah's strategy of let's put the two big players against each other, Chris and Johnny, let's put Andrea and KK against each other, like putting the best competitors against each other makes strategic sense. But there is still a flaw in that design because he pissed off an unnecessary couple. He put up a combination of all three couples, and only two people were gonna go. And I guess maybe he thought maybe we can get two people out of two couples, but instead they got out two people from the same couple. And so now there's two couples coming back where Johnny want to seek revenge on Isaiah, I would assume at some point, probably soon. But then also Andrea, who's on a separate couple with Toby. I guess Toby might feel like, hey, they saved me, but they didn't save Andrea. And I do think Andrea is going to still feel some kind of way about what Nicola did in that decision making. So you did kind of piss off two couples when you could have just pissed off one. As we know, the results were Andrea defeated KK. I didn't really feel like KK stood a chance in that elimination challenge because of her size. You got to drag this bag, this pretty big bag, a bag taller than her. I felt like it was an unfair game for KK. She did her best in that first round, but she wasn't going to win. And then I felt like it was an unfair battle for Chris because he's so big, but Johnny took him to town. Johnny pretty much had his way with Chris towards the end of that challenge to win round one, and then Chris's finger got hurt allegedly. I think Chris felt like he was going to lose the second round too and didn't want to have that look that Johnny threw him around despite him being the tall guy. But that's what they always say, the bigger they are, the harder they fall, and Chris fell on his face in that challenge and was also eliminated. Chris and KK leave together. Do I believe there's any real feelings there between those two? It's hard to tell. Chris was such a closed-off person this entire season. I do like that. I mean, I'm not upset that KK and Chris are out. I'm really not. But I am kind of upset that KK didn't get to explore more. She didn't get to have her fun. But at the same time, I'm glad she didn't look like a total fool this season, chasing after a man that's being toxic with her, and instead kind of curbed people like Tyreek that were doing that to her. So she got a mini redemption, but I do feel like it's probably a little too soon to see KK leaving this game. I won't miss Chris at all, though. He was a pretty boring addition to the cast. And we got no preview for Thursday's episode. There is no new episode tonight. So I guess I will see you all on Friday to discuss Thursday's episode.